You need facts, figures, scores, and scoops, and the truth.
You're listening to Omni Audio Africa. No Punches Pulled. Myself, Colin, Nathan, have very special. You know, I say this and do every time I'm just talking to my producer that every time I come here, I have a special guest. But this guest is really special to me. Very fortunate enough to call this man a friend, a father-like figure, and a partner to what we do outside of the scenes, not in the ring, but outside in Boxing 5. Larry Weinstein, welcome to No Punches Pulled. It's been a while coming, you coming in studio. I think I flirted with you initially when I started the show saying, Larry, eventually I want you to come in, and here we are.
Yeah, we are, Cole. It's not unusual. We're here again. So one of the things that we do. You know.
Yeah, you must be so sick of me. Like, we see each other probably more than we see our kids and our partners.
My wife often asks, you know, Colin phones you more than I do, but you know, that's the life we choose. I mean, that's what we do.
So, you know, when I interview friends or people I know or fighters that I know, my objective for the interview is to try and find out something about the guest that I never knew before. So I suppose let's get into it, Larry. We had to talk about you, your career, obviously your journey into boxing, but just you as a person. Larry Weinstein, a boy kid from the South, Turfentine. Tell me about your first childhood memories.
So not just coming from the South, being a nice Yiddish boy living in the South. I mean,
we'll get to that. We're going to get to that, yeah.
But I'm just saying, you know, it was, we grew up in Turfentine. I was a family of 5 boys. My dad, Morris, was a well-known businessman in not his own business, but he worked as a salesman, and he had these 5 boys to bring up in Turfentine. Not an easy task for him and my mother.
Yeah, you know, you're talking about the Jewish factor. You know, coming from Turfentine, were you faced as a youngster, you know, growing up in the street? I don't want to say streets, but it was a lot safer then, with any anti-Semitism towards your religion.
There was always some anti-Semitism when you showed it, you know, that you were Jewish, because everyone thought at some stage we were Lebanese, so they didn't think we were Jewish. But as you know, when I went to Forest High, and so did my eldest brother Morris, and after school we used to walk from Turfentine to Rosettenville to the shul there, and when we went to shul we had our as the guys say today, your kippahs on, your yarmulkes. So you know, that showed the Semitism and the anti-Semitism came towards that. And as you said, the kids used to play in the streets. So when you walk down the road, there were kids from different nationalities, Afrikaans, English, Portuguese, you know, in the road. And they which we got used to being, when you wore your yarmulke, you were mocked. Here comes the Jew boys, you know. So that's how we grew up, but it was never something that we were sort of unable to face, or we were sort of feeling, oh no, you know, they're picking on us. It was never the case. We were proud of it, and we walked to Rosettenville.
Do you remember who the rabbi was at the time?
I couldn't tell you, because we didn't go to the shul at Rosettenville, but they had teachers.
Cheder classes, that's right, yeah.
Cheder. We went to Cheder. Yeah, and that's where we learned about Judaism. And we went, funny enough, when we went to shul, we either went to Berea or we went to Oxford.
Oxford, yeah. Rabbi Bernard was.
That's
right.
That's
right, sure.
And that was because my dad was one of the singers in the choir there, very, very well known. Gus Levy from the SABC used to run the choirs, and when we used to go there, and after the services we had to pick up all the music sheets and put it together, and we'd get a few rand from Gus. So.
Oh wow! And then obviously Friday nights you'd have the kiddish wine, or the young kids would go up. Yeah, in fact, my first drunk experience was when I drank too much kiddish wine on Seapoint Marais Road. Anyway, I want to talk about your brothers. You come from a boxing family. The late Morris Weinstein's obviously very close to your heart, as are all your brothers. But he was pretty much one of the last line of Jewish fighters in South Africa. There have been others who have had claim up until recently, which we'll get to. But your brother, I would say, was the last real thoroughbred to come through. Explain back then, because it was in the 70s when your brother was fighting. What was it like being a Jewish boxer?
It was very strange. You know, there were a few names around, but with him being coming from the family and coming from where we came and what he went through, in those days there wasn't too many fights in his weight. He was a bantamweight, so there was a lot of, as you know, there was a lot of black fighters, but he wasn't allowed to fight black fighters.
Given the political situation. Yeah.
And if he was, he would have been fighting every week. But so what happened was he was coached by Alan Tawil as a pro.
Yeah.
He obviously started as an amateur, and then as a pro, he became very, very well known because he was always in the news, sparring with the heavyweights, sparring with Skitter, sparring with Piri, sparring with all the guys to sharpen them up. Alan Tawil was old school, and his heavyweights sparred with the bantamweights, and no punches were pulled. You know what I'm saying? And to sharpen them up. So that was very interesting, you know, from that point of view.
Your dad encouraged you and your brothers to go to Jack Eustace, which is obviously now the famous Jack Eustace Hall, which was sold to Boyson's. It's now moved across the road where Boxing 5 hosts a lot of their events. But your dad encouraged you boys to go to Jack Eustace. Explain to us why.
Encouraged as being kind. When Dad said you go. So it wasn't a case of, please, my son, would you go? He said, guys, because we were getting into all this rough and tumble out on the streets, he said, I want you boys to go and go and train. I'm going to take you to Jack Eustace. He knew Mr. Eustace was a very good person for the community, and Grant Webster was the coach, and Jerry was there. And we had the likes of Herbie Vermeulen, we had the likes of those guys there, and even the benches, Tommy Bench, Sidney Bench, you know. And so there was all of those guys there. That's who we grew up with and fought, sparred, and Boyson's was one of the top clubs. They would put on a tournament every weekend, just about, with 20 fights. Now that just tells you the number of guys that were at Boyson's.
So a lot of people don't know that Rocky, you, and Morris were competitive in the amateurs. Actually, a lot of people don't know that you actually fought competitively as an amateur. Talk us through your amateur career.
So it had two parts to it. So my amateur career at Boyson's, where we started, and I was being put on shows and that, and I fought, and I did well. Did very well, you know. I won. I think I won more than I lost. I didn't lose too many. And then at one stage, there was an issue there at Boyson's, and then my dad said we're going to go to Naas Boerte at Jugenhote. And so I went to Naas, and funny enough, I was more successful at Jugenhote than Morris was in the amateur days. But Morris also fought in the Transvaal Championships, SA Champions, and I also went to all the provincials. And then what happened was at 16, I then was offered to sign professional at Highlands as a soccer player.
Yeah, we're going to get to the soccer career now, because a lot of people also know. In fact, a lot of people know you for soccer, but they don't know your amateur career. And if I could just go back and say, do you want to elaborate on the issue that your dad had with Eustace, or you don't want to go there?
No, I don't think it was. Okay. It was just one of those things, you know.
Something arbitrary they had.
Yeah. But why I'm going into soccer is to tell you that when I was signed and then I stopped boxing, they were short of a fight one night at Boyson's, and I hadn't been training. I'd just been football, and Jerry was my trainer, the juniors trainer. When I was almost a senior, said we're short of a tournament. Don't you want to come fight? We got Henny Myers, who was the SA champion, and he said, we're going to put you on. We think you'll do okay. Would you mind? And I went against him, and I beat him.
How did you feel going in? I mean, knowing he was a champion, a South African champion, and you must have been pretty nervous.
I wasn't too nervous because Henny was a sparring partner of mine at Jugendhütte.
Right.
So I thought, well, it's not going to be, he's not going to overpower me or knock me out or anything. I'll put up a show.
So you guys were going into the fight, obviously with the bell rings, you know what it's like.
Yeah, exactly that.
Are you in touch with any of the guys you boxed with as an amateur to this day?
Only when you come across them, they say, "Oh, you remember me?" There was a reunion where there was a few of the pros that tried to get together as amateurs, and so it was one of those reunions I went to. But life is so busy, and it's not that you think you're better than them. I love meeting guys from the past, and so that was it. We often bump into each other, but never socially go out.
Yeah, just digressing on this interview, I remember I was a kid. I was probably still in primary school, and I was at the Good Hope Centre. There was an exhibition there, and I was with my late father. And a guy went up to him and he said, "Are you Stanley Nathan?" He said, "Yes." He goes, "We fought as amateurs." My dad looked at him, and he looked at him. He was like, I remember you knocked me out." So, I mean, does that ever happen where you go to these events and say, "Hey, Larry, do you remember we fought?"
Yeah, there's a lot of people that say, "Oh, Larry and I used to box," and some of them I don't remember, but you just accept.
So now let's talk about the soccer. I mean, in the community, and obviously I'm a proud Jew. When I mentioned my business partner, Larry Weinstein, they're like, "The soccer coach." So you were obviously, when you signed to Highlands, which is obviously quite a prestigious soccer club, even now it's got quite a good name. You obviously you're obviously doing soccer and boxing. So how did the soccer thing come about?
Well, the soccer came about, they have the Southern Transvaal team, and I was picked for the Southern Transvaal side. I was actually used to play Merritt's Brothers.
Oh, really?
Turfentine, yeah. How's that? The Merritt's Brothers, but they weren't a Christian soccer side. They were Merritt's Brothers that was based in Turfentine.
Right.
So I played there, and when I got to under 16, I was picked for Southern Transvaal with quite a host of players. People might have will know some of the players, but it was mainly my under 16 team that was predominantly part of that side, and we won the SA the title. When we fought, it was a cup that we played for all the provincial sides. We won that provincial tournament, which was a South African national tournament.
So were you at the school, or were you just playing for the team?
I was just playing for the team.
Okay.
I was at Forest High, so it was down the road from where I stayed. So we went there. So yeah.
Another crazy story about my late father. He went to Merritt's Brothers. And whether he was at boarding school, so I'm just trying to get the story as clear as possible. He obviously was a Christian school, and one Shabbos, Friday night, he was there with his parents, and as the food was served, he did the sign of the cross at a Shabbat table. Jewish guy. Needless to say, my late grandparents, I met my late granny once, but they took him out the school like, this is just not going to be happening. So, and then at what stage, like as a teenager, you were obviously doing really, really well. You got signed when you were 17, is that correct?
Yeah.
And then what happened? You just carried on? I'm like, you were a full-time athlete back then?
No, that's the thing. You weren't able to be a full-time athlete. So what happened was I got signed at Highlands, but I stayed in the south. Now Highlands was in the north.
Yeah.
And on Sundays I was playing for the Colt side with Joe Frickleton.
Oh, wow.
And that's where Martin Cohen and a lot of guys, that was where my roots came in handy, because a Jewish boy now playing with the boys, So, and he's Martin Cohen's late father, Jack, was a hell of a good guy. And you can even see today there was
Jack's
a building,
Paint.
Jack's Paint,
Of course.
And I used to catch a bus from Turfentine and go and stay at their place, because the buses in those days, it wasn't you get on a bus and you get on another one. And then I would sit there till we went to Balfour Park to play. And so I spent a lot of time with Martin and his father. And then what happened is, because I was, when I signed at Highlands, I couldn't box anymore because I was a professional. And at the time, when I just signed, three of my teammates from the Southern Transvaal side, they played at Brothers. One was a guy called Mark Collins, and one was Henry Buddy and myself. And there's a clipping where I sent where the actual Bill McGarry came out to interview us and speak to our parents to go and play for Wolves. And Mike Mark's parents said, Mark, you got no chance at school. You're going, and he went. And then they spoke to us and they said, well, when they're done their schooling, if you want, they can come back. But, when you lose that opportunity, my parents said, no, you go and get your matric. Henry Buddy then signed for Durban City, and he went to Durban. I went to Highlands.
So is it fair to say, sorry, just one question I was thinking about, and I don't mean to give away how old you feel or your age. Do you remember how much the bus cost you on those Sundays?
Well, I can tell you just after that at Highlands, I got a job at Standard Bank, and it used to be across the road from Rex Evans, who was Lambretta. So I got it. It was strategic for me because I would walk out of work, go to Lambretta, and they would take me to Balfour Park for training.
Wow.
So what I earned in those days was 31 Rand.
Jeez.
So you do the sums.
Okay.
You do the sums.
So is it fair to say that you kind of, at an early age in your teenage life, you had to make a choice between soccer boxing?
No, I had to.
And what was the decider? I mean, you had just beaten the South African champion playing soccer, who was your friend, admittedly, but you obviously had potential in obviously both, but you chose soccer. Why?
Because I had the love for soccer. I love boxing, but I must be honest, I boxed because my dad wanted me to box, in fairness. And it wasn't a choice. It was the natural progression. I just saw soccer as being the route that I want to go.
And then obviously still, following your brother Morris and Rock and...
The family used to follow wherever Morris fought. Funny enough, the family followed Morris wherever he fought. And when I played soccer, I was on my own. Nobody followed me, but that was okay. Yeah. I don't hold a grudge. I never have.
Yeah.
So that was the truth behind it. And I was very proud of him. Proud of the family, proud of Rocky, proud of Ricky. We were a very big, close family. And then we got the younger brother, Errol. But it was always, we couldn't be separated.
And that's what you've taken from those values from your family into business. And I often sit with you, and I know this because you're big on loyalty. You've got a heart of gold, but until they cross that line, that's it. Where you very much old school, where you accept handshakes, and I'm always on to Larry, we've got to get an agreement signed. Is that something that you can relate to from your upbringing?
Very much so. My father and I we all were close. But when it came to the business side of it, I was very close to him, and there was two things in life he told me. The one was, you come into the world with nothing. And no matter how much you got, when you leave this world, you leave nothing. Make sure that you leave a good name. Yeah. And that's always been the premise that I live by, and treat people with respect. Yeah.
Yeah, I can vouch for that. Getting back to your soccer career, you retired at the age of 35 playing, which is quite old in those days. Why did you decide to retire? And firstly, why did you play until you were 35?
Colin, I played a lot of soccer for a lot of different teams. It was almost like have boots, will travel, I mean, and people would come to me and say, don't you want to come play for us or do this or do that? And I played. But the reason I was able to play for so long, because the leagues had split. You had the PSL, and then you had the National Football League, and then you also had the Amateur League. But I was able to play because at 35, that the NFL was strong, but when it had split with the PSL, the football was a lot harder. And funny enough, when I went into the NFL, I was playing for Rangers. We won promotion into the PSL. And I was able to carry on playing because at the standard of the NFL at that stage, it was a good standard always, but in that era, it was a lot lesser, and you get a lot smarter as you get older, and you don't have to run so much, and you let the ball do the talking, And I was very blessed in playing with a lot of ex-English pros that taught me a lot, and I had not as much success winning big leagues, but we won the Castle Cup in 70. Not won it, we got beat by the side that I was signed to in 73. Which is something that a lot of people talk about, Florida Albion, and big names, Stuart Lilly, all of these guys, I played with them. And so that was always, it wasn't the glory of playing top flight football, but I played even towards the end. I had Jingles Pereira, which everybody knows Jingles, and Jingles was a teammate of mine, and he went to train Benoni Quicot in Davidton. And he said, come play for me, I want you to come. So we went, and I had a stint with Benoni Quicot, and we would go and train there, and I promise you that it was an experience, because in those days, it was prior to 1994, but we used to play, and the people used to stand outside and watch us do road runs, and we had more people outside than we used to have at the games. So those are things that I cherished. And then also, while I was playing, I started coaching. Yeah,
that was my next question.
Under 19s, I was also helping coach Rangers. So I was like a player coach, with Paul Williams, and who was our coach, that took Rangers back into the PSL. That's when guys like Shane McGregor and all of them were able to play in the NPSL, because Rangers got back into it. So, and we were with the winning team. A story that I tell people and they don't believe it. When we were playing for promotion into the PSL, we used to play a team called, we won our section and we had to have a playoff. So we would then play a team called Dangerous Darkies at their home ground. And in those days, when you went to play away, because our home ground was Rand Stadium, when we played away, the guys played on sand. And, it was not the best of... we didn't have the best of fields in that. So we played, we won. A week later, we get a letter, you have to play again. We played them 6 times and beat them 6 times, and only then were we promoted back into the PSL.
I think that's my question that I want to pose to you. I think we can agree that all professional sports riddled with politics, which we could sit here morning, noon, and night for months on end discussing. But looking at soccer the way it's run now compared to then, which has more politics, back then or now?
No, back then, Colin. Now there's the politics. It's all about money now. The politics is put aside, but it was very, very much political. And I know I was in the early days when I was coaching the Southern Transvaal Colt side. I was one of the coaches that started bringing in young black players.
Right.
Before it was ever known, but bringing them in and integrating the teams and making sure that the guys felt at home. When you took kids on tour or something and they'd never been into a hotel and didn't know what they were ordering, I would sit next to a player and say, now you order this and let him taste it, to try and help them understand the culture and not feel out of it.
Right.
And I'm very successful as a Colts coach. I was coaching Bedford View and then coached the Southern Transvaal side. And at the time, Danny O'Don was running the Southern Transvaal. So you talk about politics.
Sure.
So we won't get into that.
Let's. I'm going to try and shift back to boxing. Yeah. By your own admission, you started hustling as a teenager, getting into business at the age of 18. Paying your way, and you spoke about Standard Bank. But it's fair to say that you've always had a good business brain. You started running your own businesses and consulting about 23 years ago. Talk us through, business Larry and the sport Larry, because now I feel just by getting to know you over the last couple of years and few years that you bring a lot into both. But back then when you started business, how hard was it to, I don't want to say turn your back on sport, but, effectively become something that you had to focus on and pay the bills?
Well, let me give you an idea. When I said I hustled, when we were kids, when I was 12 or 13, probably even before that, when we were 10, at Turfentine, there's a very Rotunda Park is a famous park, and my brother Morris and I used to run around the park to get fit for boxing. When there was racing at Turfentine, the guys used to come and park outside our house, park their cars outside, and we used to go and park cars and get money from the tips.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's when it started. And then I used to go down to Wembley where they had hot rods, and Pepsi was the drink then at Wembley. And I used to go around with trays selling cold drinks.
Wow. So you were driving cars under the age? No, I'm not under the influence. I'm saying you had to be 18, but you were doing this as a teenager, and guys would let you park their cars.
No, not park their cars. They would park their cars on our space.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Sorry, I just
Okay.
on our pavement. And when
Right, and you were okay.
well, when they came back, we didn't ask; they would give you something for looking after.
Okay.
One of the first car guards around.
Turpentine is synonymous for the track, horse racing.
Yeah.
A lot of people still identify you as Larry from horses. Talk to us about the journey of you getting into horses, because that's also like soccer, horses, boxing. You've also gone into the cell phone network space at one stage. I don't really want to dwell too much into that, but obviously the horses was a big part of your career and life. Talk us through that.
So, again, Turpentine, we stayed in this big house on the corner of Hay Street. The stables in those days used to be up the road and down West Turpentine. The horses used to walk past our rooms in the morning and you hear them on the tour. So at an early age, you got an affinity to horses. And we would obviously go down to the course and see the horses and be just intrigued by what was going on. As a kid, I loved that. And I loved the sort of, I used to watch people going into the race course in collars and ties, and I would say to myself, one day I'm going to be there. Right. And that's how it really started. And also having involvement with a couple of jockeys at a young age that were sort of very friendly with my family. And so I wanted to own horses. I didn't realize where it was going to go, but and I owned horses for 40. I was 22, one of the youngest owners to get colours.
And when you say colours, explain that.
In those days, if you wanted to, horses, when the horses run, the jockeys got colours.
Right.
That's the owner's colours. And in those days, when you applied for colours, you had a circle of businessmen that sat you down and said, how can you afford this? Why do you want this? Show us your banks, show us this, show us what you got. And then they would it's like getting a license. They'd give you your license for colours, but they would say, okay, we'll give you one horse. The whole game changed afterwards. That never happened. So you're bringing people just getting colours, and that's where a lot of the game went down, I believe. But for 45 years, I owned horses. And for 18 years, I ran the racing association for the owners.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that because that's a very prominent, tough position. I mean, you've spoken to me offline about some of the madness that went on behind the scenes. But a lot of people also don't know that you're one of the pioneers in streaming for horse racing. Talk us through that.
Yeah, so the job that I had was I was started out as the chairman because funny enough, we had an issue with the board that was in at the time, and I owned a few horses, and I just got owners together. We then decided to come to terms with the directors. We got them out, and so what happened was they said, well, then you need to stand, and the guys need to stand, and I was voted then in as chairman. I was in as chairman, and then with the transformation, I undertook to get somebody in, train him, and William Nsele was a black owner. I brought him in, trained him, and I said, okay, that's me. And they said, no, you can't, because we're losing the CEO. We need you to take over as CEO. And one thing they never stopped me doing is my involvement in my own business. That's the IT business, and so they always said, you can still do that. And it was really like a part-time. It's supposed to be part-time, but it became full-time, because if I get involved in it, I get so tied up in it, and I really enjoyed it to a point where before it got ugly, where things were going sour in racing, we tried to make changes, which we did, and we believe we made a difference. And there's a lot of, everyone's got a story, about, everyone thought I'm a gangster, I'm mafia, the normal. But honestly, they can believe what they believe, but there was definitely a change. And then we ousted the guys on agreement, and we took over. And then when I was about to leave again, they said, no, we're taking on Cape Town, can you stay? So I stayed. So my stay from just doing a 3-year stint was 18 years. So it was, they looked after me, definitely did, not like I did, So they did look after me, and they were very appreciative, the directors were very appreciative of what I did and the innovations that I did. And then what happened was the owners were saying, the prominent owners were saying, we'd like to watch our horses when we're overseas and watch it when we're not at racing, because we don't come every day. And it was on Teletrack. And Phumelele said, well, we're not going to do anything about it. And the board said to me, is there anything you guys can do? I said, well, I've got a couple of guys, let's do the streaming. And that's when we started streaming. And we would get the feed from Teletrack, and it was their content, and we would then put it out. And in those days, there was no fiber or the connectivity that you have today. In those days, it was ADSL. And my guy came up with a streaming platform that he designed from some security platform, and they used to sit in the server room, and whenever the ADSL went down, we had 10, 12 lines, they would just switch the lines. So it was archaic, but the guys got to see it, and it grew, obviously as connectivity became better, then Phumelele wanted it back, and then we said, okay, take it back. So that's how it was done, but that was 10 years ago.
And towards the end of your horse racing career, you started doing boxing promotions. And you started the streaming, actually. I remember watching your first few shows in 2017 on streaming. But you were one of the first guys to do it in South Africa. And I was like, okay. I didn't think much of it at the time until obviously things start moving towards that kind of direction. But that's why I'd like to say and think that you're one of the pioneers for that kind of model. Why did you go back to boxing?
So at the time I was running the RA, and my brother Rocky had a couple of fighters, and his best friend Lionel Hunt had a couple of fighters. And the problem is the boxers couldn't get fights.
Yeah.
The age-old
problem, challenge. Yeah.
And they've got the fighters, they're not fighting. So I put a proposal forward to the betting side at Phumelele and said, guys, if we can get streaming, we can put it onto your televisions in all the betting shops. There was 240 betting shops countrywide. So I said, if we do that, and the guys come in to watch the boxing, they're going to stay and have a bet. They're going to increase, sit there, or bring foot traffic into on a Sunday. And that's if you go back in 2017, all our tournaments were on Sunday.
Correct.
And we used to put it into also why? Because we didn't want to detract from the main racing, which could have been a Turfentine or whatever, but it would be out of country, up country, you know what I'm saying? And it worked a hell of a well. It really did for them. And that's why we started it, and we put on some nice shows, some good fights. And one person I remember putting her on after the break, and she's just retired. Head of Ormerance, that's close to you, and she was very close to me because we put her on. Yeah. First lady boxer we put on at Turfentine after she had a break.
Yeah, and that's kind of leading into my next question, because you were doing like collaborations, co-promoting, and then when you reminded me of putting on Headers Fights a couple of years ago, I was like, really? Because your company wasn't frontline at that stage. You were co-promoting, and then you came up with the concept and the name of Boxing 5. And people actually, they don't even ask me anymore, because it's just kind of such an emerging strong brand in South African boxing at the moment. But talk us through the name Boxing 5.
So Boxing 5 was created, again, my closeness to betting, and the problem with boxing and betting, you can't, it's too easy to rig. I'm be straightforward.
I believe you.
Yeah. So when you went to a betting company and say, why don't you put betting up for boxing? I say, no, it's not on our agenda. And so we came up with this, because there's the pick six, where you pick six, and it's not it's a different type of betting. It's a pool betting. So you're not getting, as a bookmaker, when somebody has a bet with you and you have to pay them out, it comes out of your pocket if they win. If they lose, you take the money and you balance the books. So with Boxing 5, with pick six, people betting to a pool, and the betting company takes 25% of the pool, and that's their take, and the balance gets shared amongst the winners. So we were trying to start this Boxing 5 on a Sunday, where the guys would pick 5 boxes and betting to a pool. on that basis. But the people at Phumelela, the staff and that weren't trained up, and they didn't understand it, and it became a bit complex. And so, but that was the whole look of it, and that was the whole idea. The strategy was, that's boxing 5. You pick 5 boxes, and if you pick all 5, you become a winner, and multiple winners, and you share the pool.
2017, you were promoting regularly. 2018, you kind of stepped back. You came back 2 years ago, kept the name, didn't change the name, but you came with a new look, a new team. Leduma Lamati was centered to you coming back into boxing, and he, to this day, he's actually a director and partner to Boxing 5. Talk to us through about that relationship with you, Leduma.
So the relationship started, it was really just as a friend of the family, because Rocky trained him, and Rocky won 3 belts with him, and Rocky did very well with him. And then he came to us and said, he wants to go overseas. So Rocky organized for him to go overseas. He went to the UK. And so that's when he left us. And then we carried on putting on fights at Turfentine. And so even today still there are tournaments being put on there.
Yeah.
So that was how it came about. But then when Leduma came back, funny enough, we were having a tournament at Boyson's, and I put him on to give him a comeback fight.
Yeah, there's some issues with his previous management and promotion, and and I still have much respect for Leduma, opening his mouth, doing that famous interview where he let rip on everyone trying to control them, and he stepped back and he was like, I don't need anyone. And you and him were obviously close, but he turned to you. And there's a famous story that you often tell, that you're driving in Grant Avenue in Norwood, you and Leduma, and you're like, I'm going to start promoting again.
Yeah, that's what I said. We were going to the famous shawarma company.
Right.
That was my brother Ricky's head office, and Leduma. That was their office.
Right.
And then he said to me, what am I going to do now? I've just turned down a defense of the RBO title, and it was for decent money. When I say decent money, it was for not what he deserved, and that was the whole issue. But anyway, so then he said, what are we going to do? I said, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to promote again, but we're going to do it properly. Right. We're first going to find a streaming company. We're going to put these parts of it together, find people, and have a strategy where it's not just going to be, let me do the promoting and that, and find people to fill certain responsibilities. Because with any business I've done, you can't do it on your own, but then you need to work with people, like-minded people, that have share the same vision. And that's what we sat down, and funny enough, one of the first guys we got to speak to about it was Gazu.
Right,
Gazu.
Yeah, a famous floor manager in and around soccer and boxing for many, many years.
Because he was friends with Leduma also.
Right.
And then I said to him, so where do we find a streaming company? And then he said to me, well, speak to this guy at Vision View. They help the amateurs, and they're doing this, and that's how it started.
Yeah, I mean, then you started doing show after show, and I think it was, you were always visiting my office and the gym. You always, and that's the one thing I respect about you more so than other promoters in this country, is that you actively go to the gyms, you actively engage with fighters from a pre 4-round prelim level all the way through to championship level, but you're always accessible. And I wanted to, obviously, I don't really want to dwell on Leduma Lamati, obviously nearly passing away in the ring, because we were all there in Ireland, and it was absolutely horrific to go through that. But you've seen some tough situations in boxing. My question to you is, when Leduma had the near fatal injury of nearly losing his life against Nick Ball, did you think to yourself that maybe this isn't for me?
I turned away from the game once before when I said it's not for me, because of people in it. And again, also, I must say, the sport itself is great, but it's the people in it that
can be fucking rotten.
Yeah.
Fucking rotten, yeah.
And that was the same issue I had with horse racing, because the sport itself was fantastic. And there were people in it that were great. But the people that thought they were entitled and they didn't want to give everyone a chance, that's what really turned my back on it. And I said, this is not for me. And to say that, it never crossed my mind, I think, at that stage. It was all about, gee, what's going to happen? How's the kid going to be? Please God, So it was that. And I mean, the first time I left boxing was because of the people that ran the supposed to be positions. We never got paid for a fight in the Congo. And I mean, so I said, that's not for me. I don't need this. So that was then. But now I think because of what we've achieved, and, the thing that keeps me going is the quote that I've seen. It comes from your office, not me. It says, living the dream in boxing, changing people's lives.
Changing lives with positive vibes. Yeah, it's one of my slogans.
Do you understand? Yeah. So that is what keeps me going. And I think it gets to me sometimes where you think, there's so much nonsense. Do I need this? But it's, you're letting people down. You're letting guys that look up to you and are expecting. And now the expectation is Boxing 5 looks after us.
Yeah.
And it's not me as Boxing 5. It's the whole team.
Yeah, and I'm going to skip a question before I get back to another fighter. It's like, and I actually said to you this week, is that you everyone's uncle and you're everyone's father. Whenever there's a problem, everyone turns to you. I've been in that position where I don't need fatherly advice and I reach out. But what do you think, why do you think people are drawn to you?
I think the big thing is I'm approachable, Colin. It's not like I can't go to him with this, or and it's not that they get the right answer all the time from me. It's not that I'm a yes man. No, I'll tell them like I think it should be, and they, there's a lot of times when, and I like doing the decisions quickly. I don't like pondering on it and saying, "Oh, let's think about it." If you think about it, the chance is gone. And as you go along, you'll make the plan what you need to do, and that's I think a big part of it.
We would be remiss if not to mention our top line fighters, Loretta Dlamini, Sequence and Kotoli, and a host of others. I mean, there's such a long list, but I want to talk about the moments in Japan with Pumelelo Kafu, or Kafu, depends on which day you call him. That moments in Japan when the odds were stacked against us. I remember putting that fight together, and I remember calling you and saying, look, we can't turn this down. It's a chance of a lifetime. I think he can pull it off. But that moment when Jimmy Lennon Jr. said, and the new, what was going through your mind and emotions at that point?
Carl, what people don't realize, it's all the build-up. And, you could be a promoter and you sit in the stands and you just tell people do this, do that, and, and you think you're the big boss. But that trip to Japan with Kafu was so special because you had to be in Nagoya with Siva, and the team, and he was earlier than Kafu, and we spoke about it, and we couldn't let him go on his own, and then you meet up with him.
We had to split the camp up, actually. That's right.
People don't realize it's all about strategically planning. And then Shannon and Mark Altamir from Australia, hell of a nice guy, and so what used to happen? You were there dealing with Kafu, and we were there with dealing with Siva, and we were with Kafu. And you must know he's only been in Joburg 2 months.
Right, yes, it was crazy.
It was crazy. And he's leaving his home and going there. So what happened was, and it wasn't like we planned it, it just happened like that. In the morning at 6 o'clock, or maybe a little bit earlier, Kafu would go to the gym and Mike and Shannon would do the work with him there. He'd go and shower, come down, meet me, and him and I would go for breakfast. And we spent so much time together like that. And he was one that people don't, why he was so successful. He went into his room and slept till 4 to get ready for 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock, Shannon, Mark, myself, and him would get in the bus and go to the gym. We'd then take him for something to eat. And that's what, it was more being involved in that. It becomes like your child.
Yeah.
And to me, it was emotional. I've done a lot of things in my life and I've been very successful. But for me, that was one of the moments that I felt, it was very, very, how can I say, I was very, very teary and I couldn't believe it.
No, I was like overjoyed. And I just want to go back to that point when we sat down and we discussed how we were going to navigate the situation of separating the two teams. And logistically, I said to you, and you didn't even budge. You said, Colin, whatever you do, I'm going to say yes to. I thought bringing Mike Altamero, who's one of my very close friends in boxing, who I trust with my life, into the team because he was just well versed with the Japanese culture. And I thought the team going there, besides Shannon, being in that environment and not knowing how people are, I thought bringing someone in who's used to the culture, who's used to the promotional group, it would work well for settling in you guys and settling in Pumalena, and it worked like a charm.
Unbelievable.
And a big thank you to Michael tomorrow, by the way.
Yeah. Let's not. Mark was a star, absolute star. As was Shannon.
Yeah, the whole team. It was just, after the disappointment of Sive, a lot of people don't know, you actually came, you caught a bullet train to Nagoya to be with us. You still, I think you left your ID or your passport and they wouldn't check you into a room, and there was all that administrative issues that we had to sort out. Moving ahead, you've seen a lot in South African boxing. If there's one thing you could change in South African boxing, what would it be and why?
The one thing that I think, one thing in South African boxing, and I see people talk a good game. Let's walk the walk and do what we say we're going to do. All these things are great, and I know the minister's pushing and this and that, and I take my hat off to him. But for me, let's show it by doing, not by talking. And all we ask is that you treat everybody as equal, the same, because it affects the boxers. Rules for one and rules for all. And
having said that, sorry to interrupt, we've just had the notice of another tournament being cancelled at the 11th hour, where purse monies weren't lodged, and a cancellation letter was issued by Boxing South Africa on the Tuesday. Today, just for the listeners, it doesn't matter when the show goes out, today's Friday, and the promoter in turn was dismissive of the letter and carried on to the point where fighters were transported down from Joburg to KZN to go to a weigh-in, which never took place. That should have never happened. So when you talk about rules need to be applied to everyone, you're obviously referring to a situation like this.
Very much so, Colin, because, why did she carry on? Because she's so used to doing what they want to do and get away with it. And I keep telling people about this. Even we've been asking them, Boxing 5 to take action when boxers dismiss coming to a weigh-in where another fighter's been training for 6 weeks to fight, and they don't just pitch for the weigh-in and nothing happens. We know, and I keep saying it. I'm tired of saying it. In Japan, a top fighter didn't make the weight. 200
grams have got banned for a year automatically.
Automatically. Now, until you do that, and this is where the opportunity has been. You get a new board in, you got a new CEO, acting CEO. You need to show people that you mean business. Yes, they did it, but again, late. So it's always after the fact.
So another question which I never planned, do you think boxing should be privatized, or are you happy with it being a government sport?
Colin, let me say this, and people might not be aware of this, and I keep telling people. I ran horse racing, which was governed by the Act.
Right.
Only 2 sports in South Africa is governed by the Act. Boxing and horse racing. I was getting called to Parliament and getting involved in politics for horse racing like you can't believe. Eventually, that's also what said, you know what, I don't need this. It's enough. I'm not a politician. I do what we do. But now when I give them the answers, it's not good enough or this or that. I mean, what more can you do when you get given 5 years to bring in a transformation chairman, and I'll do it in 3? Because I'm not scared. You must teach and learn and do and bring people in, let them learn. Now with boxing, they hold on to it. And the same thing happens because now they get dictated to who runs, who picks the board, who is the BSA. And BSA's got to up their game. I'm all saying I give them a chance. But there's a lot of things that haven't changed. And that's the problem.
Do you think this promoter who has let South African boxing down should be banned.
Most definitely.
What would you think would be the adequate ban?
Come back next year and apply for a license. Take the license away. Then see if you're serious.
I want to talk on a much lighter note. We've just announced our world champion, WBO super flyweight world champion, Pumelelo the Truth Kafu, is defending here in South Africa. Province hasn't been decided. Venue hasn't been decided. But for Boxing 5, and for me, I include myself in this, it's a very proud moment for not only Boxing 5, my company and the fighter, but for South African boxing. How are you feeling about, because the last 24, 48 hours has been kind of a whirlwind with the news. How are you feeling about these things that have just transpired?
Colin, you know, obviously, it's not the first time we've been offered to do a big title fight in South Africa. The first time there was a price bid that was given to us, but unfortunately, we thought we looked at it and then we said, okay, let's see, but we weren't able to fulfill it. So people...
Sorry, just going back, it's not that we weren't fulfilling it, it's that the co-challenger of the Eliminator...
Didn't want to fight.
Yeah. So we had some funding ready.
Yes.
And then obviously it fell down to the next opponent, and the person in question was Lorenzo Dlamini.
Yeah.
We opted to go another route, and he earned, thank God, a lot of money.
But the fighter didn't want to come fight in South Africa.
True, yes, we lost out.
So, I mean, you know, what does that tell you? You know, and I mean, you would think they would love to come here, and it's unreal. But because we're not used to putting on these big shows, they don't know what they're going to get into. Until you put on one and show them what it's about, then you'll get a different feeling. So when you approached me now and you came burst into the office.
Unannounced, by the way. I must just tell the listeners and viewers.
Not that he needs to announce himself when he comes to my office, but anyway. But when he came in and he said, I've got good news. What do you think? I said, there is no question.
Never a doubt.
Never a doubt.
With no doubt.
That's right, no doubt. No doubt, for sure. Yeah. So I was very excited because I didn't think we've done 13 shows.
Right.
And now to have an opportunity to put something on as big as this, you know, it just blows my mind away. And I think we're up for the challenge. I really do.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
I think we've prepared ourselves accordingly.
Yeah.
Larry, I'm going to ask you the last question is, you personally, you got any more dreams or goals? Maybe let's just say within boxing.
Carl, you know, my dreams and goals. My goals is not sort of a definity. The goals is to give as many kids change their lives and give them an opportunity. And that's why, from our point of view, you know, it's not about making money as Boxing 5. We're all, and everybody wants to make money. And
sure.
Yeah, we have to. But because the more money you make, the better the fighters' purses will be.
Correct.
But for me, because in this short space of time, the fighters that Boxing 5 has been involved in, there's people that have been in boxing for years and years and years.
Yeah, that's true.
And, you know, and I keep saying to people, I'm not just saying it, you know, one of the reasons, and it's not me just, I've said it before, what I learned and saw, what you do and how you understand boxing. And people can think they understand boxing, and promoters can do. You and I have that relationship where I never interfere in the fighters. You put the fighters, you look after the fighters. You say, we need to do this, we need to do that. And you say, can we do it? And I say, yes, but I never interfere. And that's where the success is, because we're all working towards the same goal. And for me, if I can change people's lives like we've changed Kafu's life and more, I mean, that's really what my dreams are, and please God, my legacy will be. Boxing 5 will carry on, and we're putting people in place to, because if you know, I'm not a young guy,
really,
you know. So, but you know, I'm saying I think the legacy will be Boxing 5, and everyone talks about Boxing 5.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, we were actually just on also a very cool note. We were about 3-4 weeks ago. You and I were on the floor, and one of the fighters came up to us who we promote. So guys, like, I just bought myself an apartment. I was like, wow, like that's just better than any championship belt, isn't it?
Yeah. Unbelievable. Yeah.
Larry Weinstein joining us here on No Punches Pulled, Omni Audio Africa. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you again next week.
This is Omnisport Africa.